Guy Foster, welcome back to Business in Between, or as we've termed it, Accidental Business Owners Series. And thanks for coming to Hamilton.
No problem at all. I was in the neighbourhood.
And here we are, all together for episode number 2.
Exciting.
Of Accidental Business Owners. Now, you sent us a message on Monday, which I thought was just motivation, but it turns out it was the topic for today's conversation, which is sharpening the axe.
Well, there were 5 topics. So you just thought it was a big, long list of cool things Di was
I just thought we were starting our Mondays now with like little pieces of information. Sharpening the axe, what do we really want? Why haven't you done it already? And then I thought, when I read why haven't you done it already, I thought, what have I missed this week that I was supposed to be doing for my homework? But it turns out they were subject starters.
Is that why you sent through the Trello board on Monday? It's what you'd missed and forgotten to do.
Did I do it on Monday or do it on Sunday?
Or whatever.
Yeah. And it was Sunday. I got it on Sunday because I knew we were meeting this week. I was like, shit, that's been on my list for like 3 weeks or so. No one's looked at that, by the way. You've not looked at it, have you?
No, I haven't looked at it.
I have.
Thank you.
We need to change the picture.
Yeah, I know. And
It's awful.
I tried to print one out for the background here in this Hamilton studio, and I've had a disaster. So I think take graphics off my list.
So these I've said it wrong. Accidental Business Owner episodes.
What were you gonna say?
I don't know, accountability.
Accountability mirrors.
Maybe it's a bit of that.
And it's not Motivational Monday. I'm not everyone's Motivational Monday quotes.
No.
Just for the record.
Yeah,
for
thank you.
future.
I'll know that. That's just a work channel.
So I'm loving what we're about to do because it's very different from what we do in Between Doobies channel, where we research the shit and we plan out, what we're going to say in areas. This episode, we just have one phrase on our page, which is sharpening our axes.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
Look, it can mean so many things, but I think that when a really good friend of mine who I spent some time with over the years said to me, if I had 9 hours to sharpen, let's try that again. If I had 9 hours to chop a tree down, I would spend 8 sharpening my axe. And the one thing that I've noticed with accidental business owners is that they have spent 8 hours sharpening their axe. They've got really, really good at the mahi. They've got really, really good at their craft. And then, it's like that next stage of, when the tree actually falls. And I think that someone said to me also years ago, it took me 10 years to be an overnight success. I was working away in the background, I was doing all the things, and then, a couple of things just fell into play, and then everyone thought that I was an overnight success.
Just personally, Di, we're releasing this just a week after you came on our podcast, and I know that we have spoken about what a change it's made for your business.
Yeah.
Are we talking about you here in where you're at?
Yeah, definitely. I think that when I look back over my journey now, there has been so much work done in the background, and I always knew where I was going. Sometimes inherently I think I knew where I was going, and sometimes you're on the wrong path and you have to jump across. But I've done so many things to sharpen my axe to get to this place where I help and assist a very specific person with a very specific problem that almost on the way you can't see how it's all going to work out. It's just like you kind of go, oh yeah, that seems like a really good idea. I'll go and do that course, like classic Di. I'm so loving the work that I forget what I've done to get here. Back in 2019, I knew that I wanted to coach, and I knew that I had a huge amount of experience, but I didn't necessarily have a qualification. So I spent 3 months, and it was a hard, intense 3 months, getting a coaching qualification, master coach certification, qualification thingamajig. And, I did that with one-to-one, I didn't do it with a cohort or anything like that. And it was a really intense time, but I did it because I wanted the skills, and then I literally forgot that I had the qualification. World-class plonker here. Nearly lost a contract last week because I forgot I had the qualification.
Come on, Di, come on.
And you do the work, you get so into it, you do the work, and then it pays off at some stage, and you're loving the work, and you kind of know where it's going to go, but it takes a while.
2019's when we started as well.
Really? That's
like November 2019, where Stephen bought a single microphone, omnidirectional, and then we sent an email out. I don't even know if we sent an email, we just text him probably, to Aaron Scott, episode 1 guest, who was a club legend at Melville United, Stephen sent me a link to a podcast to listen to, Tim Ferriss. Listen to this part. This is about crafting good questions. Come up with 10 questions. And then we both did. He came round to your house at Glenview and we recorded our first ever podcast. And
I love that.
We didn't really know what we were doing. That's pretty fair.
No, we didn't know what we were doing at all. It's funny. We had a moment of reflection in the Brooke Howard-Smith episode we recently released on our Between DBS channel. And I asked him what advice he had for content creators. And he sort of flipped it back on us. He said, what would you say?
Yeah.
And it boiled down to start, don't stop. And so we started and we didn't have a podcast channel. We didn't really know what we were doing, but we just recorded and we put it on our Facebook page and I think on SoundCloud at the time. And, you know, podcasts are such the hot thing now. You know, everyone's starting a podcast. And the reason that ours is where it is because we started 5 years ago and because we didn't stop. And in those first 2 years, it was all about having fun. It was our most enjoyable part of the week. We didn't worry or care about how many people listened or any sort of expect any monetary return. We just enjoyed doing it. And that's why we were able to do it for, I think, 2.5, 3 years before we got any semblance of money. The only money we made, the trickle of money we made, we just reinvested back into petrol and, I don't know, paying for a few beers. But because we loved it, we kept going.
Yeah, shout out to the Patreons in those early stages for that $180 or whatever we were getting to help support our costs.
But let's go back a bit though. You know, you said we didn't know what we were doing. Just like to call your bullshit on that. Because, you know, what did you just say? You said, you know, he sent you Tim Ferriss's, listen to this bit. This is how you ask really good questions. And, you know, like that is gold. You know, like Tim Ferriss is huge. Like that man knows his shit. So, you know, like, and even like you say that's where it started, but actually you were listening to Tim Ferriss before that.
You grew up listening to a lot. Stephen recently got quoted on a Radio New Zealand interview saying, I grew up listening to Joe Rogan. It was like, you grew up listening to Joe.
You're not that.
You're 38, man. Like you started listening to Joe Rogan a little while ago.
But you are right. And I remember when we first started and someone at NZME said, oh, they're a bit long. You should maybe sort of make them 40, 45 minutes. That's quite sort of hot right now. And I remember thinking, well, Joe Rogan and Tim Ferriss are the most popular podcasters in the world, and theirs go for 2 or 3 hours. And so I was like, well, why would that be different in New Zealand? Why is no one else doing that? They should just go for as long as they go.
Yeah.
And that has become our point of difference. But yeah, you're right. I mean, the Tim Ferriss was a huge influence. The amount of prep he put into each guest. He got the best leaders in the world in, but he would have a team that would research the shit out of them for weeks to find out exactly what questions to ask. I was like, oh, there's something there.
Yeah, and that's the gold. You know, you start something with no guarantee of outcome and you hone your skills and then you accidentally end up with this situation. And like, let's be honest, we talk about accidental business owners, but it's a little bit tongue-in-cheek. You know, it's a little bit tongue-in-cheek to say it accidentally happened when there has been that much intention and work behind it. But there aren't any guarantees. But you have this feeling that you know the work that you want to do and you know the impact that you want to have, and you get stuck into the work rather than your head in the clouds, meaning that it has to produce this or it has to be this. So you really commit to something without any guarantee of an outcome.
I think the accidental business owner part is the thing that I never, I thought there was a chance the podcast might turn into something. Maybe,
definitely
as we got going. But the other parts of it that we're adding, the actual stepping away from your job and becoming a business owner, like these waves are still hitting me every week, 6 months in. And I'm like, shit, we're out on our own here. No one's coming to save us.
Oh, so good.
It's like if things go wrong, I've got 4 kids and a wife and a mortgage, and what are we going to do? But you've helped sort of manage those thoughts when they go astray, right?
But I think that's the thing about sharpening the axe, right? Is that if you do look at it critically, nobody's done more to sharpen their axe than we have podcast-wise. Nobody in New Zealand. We had this conversation at the NZ Radio Awards and we got asked that, who else? And we humbly threw out a few other names, but they don't do the same stuff that we do. And you tell a great story of episode 2, Paul Nixon, And was that like a game changer for you?
Yeah, so Paul Nixon was our high school football coach, and I'd known him a decade, and like English guy, loved to laugh, had lived a really interesting life, but I'd never asked him questions about some of the most interesting parts of it, which was his wife passed away of cancer. He brought up 4 kids by himself. Here I am. I had 2 at the time, but I was like, why have I never spoken to him about that? And the reason is because there was never the right time or right place. But by inviting him in to an environment where we were going to unpack his life, raised that with him beforehand, and we had a great chat. We spent 15, 20 minutes talking about a part of his life which he probably hadn't really talked to anyone about for 20 years. And I was like, oh, there's gold there, because let's just do that with as many people as we can.
100%. And I think people talk now about we create an environment which makes it really easy for you to sit down and tell your story, but we were doing that right from the very start. Like, I think the way that you handled Nico in particular, by talking to him beforehand about, I remember now going back to your place in Glenview about is it gonna be okay if we talk about
Wilma?
Is it going to be okay if we talk about Wilma? And he was like, yep. I mean, we actually said, do you know what a podcast is? And he had no idea what that was as well. But I think we did, like, straight off the bat, we handled our guests with that love and care, and were really respectful that it wasn't our story to tell, but we could facilitate it. And that became a really powerful thing through, like, Bunsey, you and Bunsey on episode 3 with your reconciliation after you had a falling out, talking about an issue there, or Gordy with all of the wonderful stories that he had to tell about all of the cool stuff that he'd done. It's like the sharpening your axe thing is really resonating in terms of, like, actually really thinking back to what we did when we first started and how we did it, and how we've just continued on that same vein without really deviating too much.
Which is super interesting to me, because one of the first conversations that Steve and I had was around, like, what your goal is. And I feel like now you understand more about what your goal is and why you don't have competition compared to, 6 months ago. Because, like, when you realise you don't have competition because you're actually doubling down on yourselves and what you bring to the table, then that's fantastic. And it's really hard because, you do get people saying to you, hey, 45 minutes, who's going to listen to an hour 45, But when you believe in yourself and you know that actually all of these things have actually contributed to what has made you incredibly successful, then that's a good day, when you start to understand your own impact, or, what it is that you have to offer. And, like, coaching in my space is no different. I don't know anybody that would front up and say, I coach business and people, because a lot of people do mindset, and it's strictly mindset, and it's, quite a hustle sort of a component. But I'm really clear that I look after people in business, and a lot of them just so happen to be accidental business leaders, either in business or in leadership. And it's like owning that space of, actually, I can't leave the business part behind and become a life coach. And I can't, just be a business coach, because it's the people that are, the opportunity and the problem.
Is this a big part of what you do with your clients? You help them realise the value of what they are worth? Because I remember a conversation with you initially, and I was struggling with, charging ourselves out at a rate for sort of speaking gigs, and feeling a bit uncomfortable at charging for a higher number. And we had this exact conversation. You're like, well, yeah, but think about all the work that's gone in to get you here. It's not just the 45 minutes you're talking for, or the 2 hours before where you're putting the PowerPoint together or whatever. It's 5 years.
And it's even greater than that. Like, let's be honest, it's not like you guys turned up and said, oh, let's ask some difficult questions. Because, how did you get to that point? How did you get to the point that you were listening to Tim Ferriss? Why were you interested as a journalist in how to ask, questions that were probing, or, whatever it is? It's like, it's all of that stuff. And, it's your life experience, and it's your work, and it's the hours that you've put in to build, this thing. And it's all of that. But there's 2 parts to it as well in terms of value. One is all of the experience and that you bring. And, we have a habit of going, especially when we start out, my time is worth. But actually the flip side question to that is, what is this worth to the person listening, or what is this worth to the person that I'm doing this work for? So if they don't work with me, their life will stay the same or probably continue to spiral or downwards, or they'll find somebody else. But if they do make the change and they do invest in themselves by coming to work with me, what does that mean to them? You know, so like it's a pretty easy sell when someone comes to see me and goes, look, this is shit and this is shit and this is shit. And it's like, well, what's that costing you and where you're going to be in a year? And they're really clear about exactly what it's going to cost them. You know, and they're prepared to pay for that investment back in themselves. But if I just sat there and said, well, I'll just work out what my time's worth, you have to consider both.
I think a slight detour, but on the same theme, is the business we started with Reflections interviews. So for those who don't know, we will go to someone's house and do a between two beers style interview with your mum or your dad or your cousin, or just for private family use. So passed down for generations and to capture stories. But as far as I know, there's a few sort of book forms out there, but there's no one else really owning the space in New Zealand. And the demand that we have come through the door is because of the value it gives to people. And so why is it valuable? It's because of the 5 years and before of working our way through someone's story, knowing how to move from happy to sad and sort of transition through these areas and capture the storytelling essence of someone's life in a 2-hour format. And there's not, I don't think there'd be anyone in New Zealand who is as practiced as us in that, because we've done 170 episodes of it. So, you know, again, talking about price and what value is it, and you're like, you got to raise the price. You got to double the price. You are offering something to someone that they can't get anywhere else. And what's more valuable than capturing your family story?
And I think one of the things that you said to me was, yeah, but there'll be some people that can't afford that. And I'm like, you're right. Good chat. What's your point? Yeah. And so this is the thing, is that if you value your time correctly, then you also have the opportunity to go back and say, you know what, I actually want to do this one. We're going to give them a discount if we really want to. We might do this one for free. Maybe. I don't know. But I'm just saying, if you value yourself correctly, that allows for supply and demand to be at the right level, and then you always have the opportunity to do things from your heart if that's what you want to do.
That's a really interesting one, because it's personally the speaking thing. It's like every family event, more or less every family event, I'm asked to MC it, or I'm asked to do this, or I'm asked to do that, football things or like old school things. And yeah, I've got a real, like, I know I've done heaps of it, so I'm good at it. But I have just done it because I feel obligated to do it. So like that whole thing of sharpening your axe, of all of the things that I've done before, that's why. And then to not then charge for it, I'm kind of connecting dots in my own head as I'm speaking here. It just seems silly.
And there's only you know, so you need to put some demand factor on it. You know, like you can't just keep going and just doing everything for everybody. You have your own responsibilities, and, you know, and also I'd say you have a responsibility to bring your best A game, you know, and so money is just a means of exchange. That's all it is. It's like, you like this, okay, it's going to cost this. It's no more complicated. I think one thing that's super interesting about what we're talking about, though, is that quite often around value and charging comes down to your genius zone. So it was a complete surprise to me that people were prepared to pay me for the thing that my mother told me to stop doing my whole life. Diane Gamble, would you stop being so bossy? Diane Gamble, shut up for 5 minutes. You know what? I get paid for that shit now. It's like, screw you, Mum. It's like, actually, that was, you know, so the very thing that we're really good at, and, you know, like my dad would say that I'm really, really good at connecting the dots. You know, why am I good at connecting the dots? I'm a bit dyslexic, you know, all of that sort of stuff. It's very natural to me, but it became a complete surprise to me that not everyone else can do that. It's like, wow. So it's that thing inside us that we do, that we think everyone else should be able to do, that we would happily do for the rest of our lives. But lo and behold, not every other bastard in the world does it.
Yeah, and then to go back to where we first started, the kind of origin story of it was at the football club, like after games, where we would kind of corner We would kind of corner someone or on the bus and corner them and just be like, a bit of sadness behind those eyes, man. What's going on? Is everything okay?
No, really tell us.
Yeah.
We got time.
And it wasn't planned, but it was sort of became a two-pronged attack. It was quite, it was quite funny.
So you think that your beginning is when you buy a microphone, and you blah, 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 but actually you've been doing it your whole lives.
Yeah.
But
annoying the shit out of people.
Basically, winding them up.
Found a way to make money out of our testing. But is this unique podcasting to the other business owners, the other accidental business owners you work with? If someone's starting a IT company or something, I guess it's the same, right? They will have had a big, long lead-in time of honing their craft. But
yeah. They're the person you go to when you've got, problems. Like, my husband's really interesting. He works in IT, and I love to give him heaps, because it's like
Steve the Stallion.
Are we calling him the Stallion?
Well, we are, because
it's the first time. I know he's 1 for 1, but
I really want to send it to his workmates because they get this big cup, and he's like, "Di, you wouldn't do that to me, would you?" And I'm like, probably.
Steve the Stallion.
So anyway, poor Steve. Right. So he's really interesting because one of his things that he does is, I think I read it recently, there's this job called, in the future, it'll be a prompter, and it's like he is really, really good at asking Google questions. Now, that might sound ridiculous. I can't find the same answers. I don't know how he does it. And so, there is quite often this thing that we do that is a surprise and why anyone else couldn't do it. So he's our go-to person in our family to get answers on anything. So it's it starts that way. Dave Wood, same thing. Same thing. He's been honing his craft. He's always been interested in performance. How do I get out of pain and how do I perform again? And how does that athlete do that? And how does this person do this? It's a question that is curiosity.
So this sort of sharpening the axe theme, when you work with clients and they come to see you, is it an important part of the first session or the first few that they understand how they've got to where they are as part of realising their value? Is that a big important piece, you think? No.
Some people are already there. Some people already know their value, and actually they're at the next step, which is work is amazing. I've commercialised it. Everything's going really well. And now I'm losing every other aspect of my life.
It sounds like a topic for the next episode.
Sharpening the axe it feels like it leads into like why. Why did you focus on those kind of elements, or why did you focus on pinning that person in the corner and asking them questions about what was going on in their life?
So tune in.
No, hang on, we're not done yet. No, how important do you think it is, find something you love and then make a career of it?
Hey man, that's mine. That's mine for my keynote.
That's yours.
Yeah. Nice.
What do you buy? Is that do you buy into that?
Total bullshit.
Yeah. Okay.
It's not part of my keynote anymore.
It's so true. And if it stops, the biggest thing that I see, and I saw in myself, is wanting something so much. Like literally, my good mate Reese said to me, Di, your desire to drive fast is so inherent in you. It's the very thing that is stopping you from driving fast. And so I think sometimes we're so doubling down on the impact we want or the purpose we want in our life that it stops us taking action. So the only reason I think it's a little bit of bullshit is just sometimes you just have to start. And you don't even know where it's going to lead. Like, if you had told me 5 years ago that I'd be sitting here with you guys and all of this would have mapped out, I would have been like, ooh, it might have paralysed me not to start, where it's like you kind of figure it out as you go. But I think there's too much emphasis at the moment on knowing your why. Does it give you a little bit of joy? Just try it. Do it. Don't overthink it. Don't make it into this, it has to be this big thing. Because the very thing that we've been talking about is we all started. We all just started. We realised we liked it. We were having an impact and we went for it. Do you know what I mean? And so honing your why too much, I think, is the very thing that can trip us up. Because I think the gold is when you sit back and go, this is just what's happened in the last 6 months, and I could not have planned it better. And when that happens, you know you're in flow and shit gets real, and that's the gold.
That would be my advice to podcasters. Start.
Yeah.
Just start, because you listen back to our first episode with Aaron Scott, and I don't think we let him talk for the first 15 minutes. It was just me and Shay doing big rambling intros about how we knew each other and stuff. And I've actually listened back to more than that intro, because it just makes me cringe. But yeah, you never could have imagined where it's gone.
No, that's from that initial conversation with Azza to where we are now is a long, long way.
And that's not advice to podcasters, it's advice to everybody. You know, if there's that little thing inside of you that is kind of speaking to you to kind of like give it a go, don't overthink it. Don't narrow it down to your why and your purpose and make it bigger than it needs to be. Just start.
Nice. I think that's a good place to end. Shay, you doing outros for these ones?
Well, that's episode 2, Sharpening the Axe. You can catch this on our Business in Between channel. I don't know how to say that. Business in Between.
No, you got
Business
it.
in Between?
Yep. Give us a
our own
follow.
channel. Give us a follow. Yeah, Business in Between. Also on socials, YouTube, and Di Foster at diefoster.com.